Good morning, Giants. Welcome to Wake Up with Giants TV. Have you ever wondered how to embody your full potential? Stick around. Good morning, Giants. Welcome to Wake Up with Giants TV. I'm Ryan Morris, and as always, I'm here with your host, Nicholas D. Smith, the author of The Giants and the Smalls. If you aren't following us on YouTube, you should go do that right now. Now, hit
And now,
and now.
and again.
Hit the button so you can know when we go live every single dang time. And then you can follow us on Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn. Where else are we, Nick?
TikTok.
TikTok.
And as Ryan says, OnlyFans and farmers only.
Not
Yeah,
yet.
maybe. Maybe not.
In the right place.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nick, will you introduce our guest this morning?
I would love to. I'm going to read the bio because this is impressive. This is Erika Cartagena, and she's joining us from New York City. Beautiful sunny day out there in New York. She's a sought after BIPOC, and I have no idea what that is. Latin.
What did you call her, Nick?
Yeah.
Black
Yeah.
Indigenous person of color.
There we go. There we go. Now I know
Thank
what
you.
it is.
There you go.
She's a HR organizational development expert. She's passionate about helping leaders embody their full potential in the workplace and beyond. And as a highly sensitive, intuitive empath, Eric is adept at creating psychological safety to inspire positive behavioral change and within individuals, teams, and systems. She's been coaching teams and individuals globally since 2008. She has over 15 years of experience leading people functions globally and started HR People at Etsy and JustWorks, in addition to advising several companies at various stages of growth. She's an investor who holds board seats in organizations supporting artists. Her clients include teams from Etsy, JustWorks, Twitter, Signal, Sciences, Goldman, Dropbox, Benchling, is that right? HackerOne. Geez, there's a lot. The Shift,
A lot of tech
Network.
stuff.
It's like the credits at the end of a movie. It's like Erica.
Mine
And
would
then
be
it's
like
all
1.5
Erica.
sentences.
Yeah.
And it starts with Ryan is.
Yeah.
That's the bulk of it.
So her work is informed by her diverse education at Columbia Business School, the Nalanda Institute. She's been at NYU and Harvard Negotiation Project, in addition to countless teachers from all over the world. She's also a member of the Forbes Coaches Council. She has a background in dance, is an avid surfer and certified yoga and meditation instructor, and she lives with her dog, her longtime roomie and pup, Tyson. And we want to send out some blessings for Tyson, who's struggling today. So Erika, welcome to the show. Did I miss anything?
I think that's pretty much everything, aside from I'm a leadership development coach. So that's the simple title. And a lot of the
You mean I could have just said that?
Yeah. The top part is pretty important as well. So
yeah,
yeah,
it's impressive. Our goal with this show is to really dive into your journey and your philosophy, and we're gonna naturally do that as we talk here. And if we get off course, it's even better. So if we go down some rabbit hole, that's awesome. So you'll see comments on the bottom. You can answer those if you want. You can ignore them, whatever you feel like doing.
Okay.
But we're going to go back in time with you to either childhood and development or an awakening moment in your life. So I'll let you choose where you want to start. As some people really enjoy talking about what it was like growing up.
I guess I'm happy to chat about either thing, but I'll start with childhood. Sure.
Yeah. Okay. Let's do that. Tell us about it. What was it like?
I grew up in love rabbit holes too. I grew up in Rockland County, New York. Oldest Latina household. I'm Cuban, Puerto Rican, and probably a few other things. We keep unpacking and discovering things with every 23andMe test.
Yeah.
And
I think we're 23rd cousins, actually.
Yeah, probably. That would actually make a ton of sense, actually. And I had a beautiful upbringing, not too far from the city. And my parents were very young parents. So my parents met at teenagers. My mother was married at 19 and had me at 20. And the rest of my family had children relatively young as well. First generation here. I'm the oldest of 3. So there was just a lot of pressure that was placed on me as the oldest and as the role model, which I'm sure a lot of first gen people could appreciate. And my father was quite strict, so I felt a little bit sheltered and unfree, and always had these like elaborate escape plans that involved like a rope from my bedroom window. And I just always, had a really, really strong desire. I'm incredibly close to my family. I love all of them. I moved back to New York from California in order to be closer to them. So we're wonderful. I see them every single week. We talk almost every day. But childhood was a little tough at times because my parents were children raising children. So they were learning as they were very much building the plane as they were flying it. So we were teaching each other a lot. And it also informed a lot of my ambition, my unconventional nature, my desire to be free. And I had wanted to like escape the little bubble. And I really wanted to test convention and test boundaries. And I think that planted the seed and helped inform the rest of my life. I knew that I had to carve out my own path. There was nobody else that I was really looking to from a role modeling perspective, as in, I want that exact life. So it always felt like it was on me to create it. And I think that was something that was born within me from my early childhood years.
I think that's an interesting dynamic because you have first gen parents, or you're a first gen from your parents coming to America,
Yes.
right? And so Sham, how do you say it? Seetharam? Is that his last name? Sham? Dr. Sham?
Dr. Sham?
Yep. Yeah. He's a follower of ours and just an incredible person. He's going to do a show on our network. But his parents were from India and similar pressures, right? And so navigating that during development is you've got all this pressure coming on you and then trying to escape in a way, trying to develop your own identity within that while having the pressure to bring the traditions forward. Yes. And so I can imagine that some people might not have had that. They're 4th, 5th, 100th generation, whatever it is in America now. So there's not that pressure. And so how did that impact you as far as feeling like you fit in socially, maybe accepted? Does that make sense?
Absolutely. My brain was going there as you were saying that.
I was reading that as I was reading your thoughts. That's where I saw your brain going.
There you go.
Yeah.
The desire to assimilate was really real. I grew up in a predominantly Jewish community, and my parents, I was never incredibly religious. My parents were Catholic. And I'm not even sure that I can call them religious. But my mom certainly was more of a practicing Catholic than I ever was. So there was, and I had definitely felt like an outlier growing up. I was the only, aside from my siblings, the only Hispanic woman, the only Hispanic child that I knew. So there was, and when people came over to my house, I was so embarrassed because my mom used to talk about people right in front of their faces in Spanish. And I was like, Mom, stop it. So my desire to assimilate English was so strong. And so that was something that came through quite often. I just wanted to blend in. I didn't want to stand out. I wanted to be like my friends. And so that was certainly a thing. And the juxtaposition there is that my family, of course, like they really wanted to maintain tradition, and they really emphasized, like overemphasized family, and made us, because I was an adolescent at the time, and all I wanted to do was be with my friends. But my parents like always drew us into family life and kind of forced it for quite some time.
Yeah.
It's really funny because now I'm like, hey, are you guys busy? Can I come over and hang with you?
Of course, weird when you get older. Like I want to move back in.
I know.
Like not have the responsibilities anymore.
Parents and parents.
It's like throwing in a VHS or a cassette tape, right? It's novelty in a way.
Absolutely.
So for those that are wondering if I can read minds, Hugh, no, I can't read minds.
Oh, I'm all just say I'm like,
No, and I don't believe that I can. So no, that doesn't exist. But
I was like, get out of my mind, Nick.
So yeah, that dynamic, right, of wanting to assimilate, wanting to fit in, and then also creating your own path. So what created, did you know you were going to do what you're doing now
Gosh,
when you
not at all.
started? Okay.
Not at
So
all.
tell us a little bit about the pathway that emerged as you started stepping into discovering yourself.
It's a beautiful question. So I always had an entrepreneurial spirit. When I was in when was it? When I was in middle school, I was interning for a private investigator, and while in high school, I became co-owner of a pizza restaurant and opened that up with somebody who I was dating at the time in order to help myself, help pay for college. Again, I was still in this escapist running away sort of mentality.
Yeah, yeah.
And there were a lot of things that informed my path. I've always had an incredibly strong service orientation.
Hmm.
Like one of my deepest truths is that I'm here to serve. Like use me for that, source or whomever. And that had I think I was just born with it. I'd always had this like deep desire to be in service to people, and more importantly, to be in service to animals. So I had wanted to be a vet throughout most of my life. And then I went to school and I changed my major to biology. I was interested in studying medicine, but while I was actually shadowing a couple of doctors, I got really into the Western medical system and I became disenfranchised with how it was run and how it felt like really operational, and we were like spitting people out when I was actually really interested in the science of healing. Like how can I show up for people in a space and create the space for deep healing to occur? And I guess just a byproduct of my experience was such that the realistic limitations of our medical system shone through really strongly. And then I was a little bit lost. It was in my junior year, and I was like, okay, well, I just burst this medical school bubble to my parents' dismay. They probably will still give me crap about it. And so what do I do now? So then I was like, well, business is pretty broad, so I guess I'll just study finance and economics. So I landed backwards in this, finance sort of track and did incredibly, incredibly well. So I started my career at PwC, and I was there for a couple of years modeling CDOs, 2008. We all know what happened then. And in 2008, my entire world changed. There were 1,000 different things that happened at once. It was one of the toughest years of my life. And it caused me to deeply reevaluate everything, what I was doing, how I was showing up, etc. And my partner at the time and my dearest friend passed away, and we suddenly were working together. And I remember going to my HR person and saying, Bianca, I quit. I'm out. Like, just, I'm out of here. And she was like, oh, but you're so good at what you do. And, you've shown up with so much heart and compassion. And I think marrying your soft skills with your analytical skill set would make you a really powerful asset in the coaching and HR journey. And I was so naive. It was 2008. And I was like, yeah, I'll try this HR thing. I want life to be easy and I want to plan parties for a while. That was literally what my thought process was. Little did I know what I was stepping into. And I've never looked back from there. So I applied for my first HR position in a corporate setting while still at PwC. And it's become such an incredible journey over time in marrying how to help people heal in the workplace, which is where they spend the vast majority of their time. So I fell into it completely backwards. I absolutely love what I do now. I'd always been interested in psychology and studied Tibetan Buddhism, gotten really deep into like exploring what is the human condition, have done a lot of vision quests and solo and soul, all different types of soul journeying. So all of that kind of fit together, but only in retrospect when I traced the breadcrumbs. I had no idea what I was doing, where this was leading at the time. And then finally, from a coaching perspective, I loved the HR work for some time, but when I felt into and I really took a look at my life, where my highest joy and my highest excitement was, and where I spent the vast majority of my time, it was in one-on-one conversations or in group mediations or in creating harmony and psychological safety in the workplace. So I decided to build my own internal like micro practices and introduce coaching into the organizations that I was working within. And then my practice became bigger, and like my practice outgrew my actual role as an HR leader. So then I started to just focus more and more and more on coaching. So then I was doing internal coaching, and then I eventually went out on my own.
Amazing.
So that's like my whole journey.
Yeah. let me pause there, because this is a highlight of the journey. you hit on some things. Steve Jobs said this: you can't connect the dots looking forward, only backwards. So you have to trust that they'll connect. And you're saying the same thing or a similar thing is looking forward. You can't see how this is all going to come together. You wouldn't have even known that you would be in this profession, truly.
Not at all.
So as you're starting on your journey, it kind of evolved into that. And certain events like 2008 happened. I would imagine that the passing of a partner occurring would have you revisit life and what's important to you. And then from there, really step out and align with that more. It's amazing that the things that occur in our lives are really eye-opening in a way. It's we have our delusion of what life should be like and what we're doing, and this is the right path. And then we come back to reality from an event like that. And it really has us question how we want to show up in the world. And so I appreciate that journey, because for those listening, it's an opportunity to really look at trusting the steps. The steps are going to connect. So if I use the analogy of a tree, right, as an example here, and hang on to that thought, because I know you have that there. So hang on to that, and we'll get to it.
Am I that emotionally transparent?
Yeah, no.
She's just reading your mind again.
No, I just heard you. I heard you start to verbalize it. But hang on to that for real, because we'll come back to that. Okay. But the idea of a tree is that it's not a straight line. There, very rarely do you see a tree that is just a straight stump to the outcome. It's always branching and bifurcating, and our lives go that way. Yet we're taught that you need to have goals that are straight lined. And I would imagine that some of those paths in the tree are straight lines, but the tree as a whole is not. So your life as a whole is more like the tree than it is a single branch. And so I want to tie you back to what you were just about to say. Do you remember that?
Oh yeah, I do.
Okay, go ahead.
That's a really beautiful analogy, actually. And thank you for sharing that.
Yeah,
that often comes up in meditation, rooting into the earth, and just even the way trees communicate. And I really appreciated that.
I love that their heads are in the dirt. Their brains are in the dirt. Literally. It's amazing.
Exactly. And what you said, so there were, unfortunately and fortunately, just life is what it is. There were a series of events in 2008, in addition to what the market was doing. My mother was diagnosed with stage 3 cancer, all within the same 2 months, and a couple of other individuals passed who were really near and dear to me, which just caused me to really surrender into the void and become like betrothed to the unknown. And I can't tell to this day, and it's still a practice for me, especially during these times, whether I was just so cried out and so emotionally spent and exhausted that I couldn't do anything else but surrender, because I didn't have any more fight in me. It just taught me the most incredible lessons to just allow, with a great deal of any sort of grace and compassion that you can muster, and to pay attention really deeply, because you kind of have no choice. And like when life takes, you go through ups and downs, and when you're in the peaks and valleys, sometimes you're just staring into the abyss. And to really practice, as uncomfortable as it is, to feel as comfortable as possible. Like I remember just like in prayer, my thought practices and in my meditation, just saying, okay, Erika, you're betrothed to the unknown. You can't see what comes next, but trust that it's for your highest good. Allow surrender. You're going to be okay. You'll get through this.
That's incredible. The amount of things that do occur at one time or happen at one time, and then you're wondering, why me? Why is this happening to me of all people? Well, why not? Why not? In one sense. And there's really opportunity inside of that depression and that depressed state, because it really pushes us and forces us to step back from our visions and hopes and delusions that we have about how life should be, and look at life like it is. And when we do that, we often go into the rumination, reflection about what's going on. And that's where the opportunity is. The rumination and reflection often is so intense. I heard this week that communication emotions are communication before communication. So they're the communication before the words. And so often we feel the emotions before we even know what's going on or what we're communicating. And you can see that on people. I'll be in conversation and I'll see it all over their face and their body movements. You are communicating what's going on, even though you might not be speaking it. I've had people where it's two different conversations going on. The emotional conversation and the one we're having. It's like your mom speaking about her friends in front of their faces, right?
Yeah. The visceral memory of that just makes me so uncomfortable.
Yeah. Well, it does for other people too. If we're having two conversations and there's an emotional conversation going on, but a verbal conversation going on, it's not meshed or melded.
That's right.
And so as you're going through this and you tap into that surrender, which feels like a forced surrender, what did you discover? Like, what had you wake up at that time to this creation that you're in right now?
Well, I think that's another beautiful question. Thank you.
You're welcome.
The real knowing
Thank you for that acknowledgement. That's awesome.
Yeah. Life in, if we believe in 3D matrix reality, linear time, just the real finite nature of life. And honestly, it just takes me back to the importance of showing up for your people and for yourself with the deepest sense of love and compassionate understanding, and not having anything left unsaid. So it was that year where I started to do a lot of self-legacy work and reflection, not in an egoic sense, but like what sort of impact do I want to leave on this world? If I were to go tomorrow, how would I feel about that? What feels unlived and unmet? What is going to be my greatest sense of purpose and impact? And that's when I started to write my obituary, which is a thing that I do every single year, and meditate on death and just really contemplate it and unpack it as something, we live in the West, at least, like a predominantly death phobic society. So I started to just get really curious about it because I almost had to, and just ponder impermanence and the unknown and start to really relax into that and work on making it feel safe for my nervous system to relax into that.
Okay, I want you to dive down a rabbit hole with me.
Sure.
On impermanence, wabi sabi, right? The Japanese version of it. The idea that nothing lasts, it all passes. We pass. At some point, we're all gonna hit that road, right? You're experiencing that right now with your pupper. Yeah. And so the idea of impermanence and creating peace around that. Can you dive into that a little more?
Yeah, I think that there's a relationship and a correlation between our expression of love and grief. So my grief cycle for my dog and what it is that we're currently going through together as like my familiar and a family member, my closest confidant, my best friend, my love, is, we have been together for 16 years, and it's an honor to show up for him as his senses are going and like in this state of deterioration. It feels like it's the very least that I can do. And we get to love each other, and I get to like hold him during this critical stage of his transition. And I just, there's so much love there. And that's why I just feel like the grief is like in direct correlation to the amount of love that I feel for him. And I bring it back to gratitude, but not in like the bypassing sense where like I force myself to be happy. I mean, puffy. I spent the past 2 days like hysterically crying, like allowing for the full spectrum of emotion to move through me. And my work isn't doing my best not to judge it, just to allow it. And it was only because I've spent the past 2 days crying that I'm able to come to get like a slightly, like just a little bit closer today to what acceptance might look like. And I can just feel, how just my gratitude for him and our time together.
Hugh's been trying to teach me this lesson for years. He's one of our followers in the group. His daughter passed away, Jessica. And the grief cycle, we have it in our journeys, the 12 journeys, and it's an important journey because it's one of those things, if you don't recognize what it does for you, then it can really be impactful in a negative way. And so to wake people up to the idea that grief can serve you, but not recognizing what grief even is, or that it's present. Sometimes we'll go through a change in our lives or it's impactful, like an animal dies or a family member dies or passes, or you lose a limb. We've had people lose limbs or paralysis. When you get into that space, you go through the grief cycle, which pulls you into, like Hugh says, like you're saying, a loving of the experience. And it's beyond gratitude, because gratitude is kind of fleeting in the moment.
Yes.
And the more you do it, the less effective it becomes.
Mm-hmm.
Grief is one of those things that's long lasting. It's impactful. And it has you remember, like Hugh says, like you're saying, the best parts of the experience.
Yes. And it's nonlinear, and it comes in waves, right? So just, and our memories are triggered by our experiences, like just, anyways.
Yeah. I love that. Ryan, do you have some thoughts there?
I was thinking about you mentioned writing your obituary. And so as you're doing that, I mean, I would imagine that as you write your obituary of maybe how others see you, you can then see where you need to work on, maybe see your shadows or your weak spots. Can you dive into that a little bit? Because now I'm super curious on, like, is there a process behind? My question's not as beautiful as Nick's, but
Yes, it is.
Well, yes, it is.
Yeah,
he's a beautiful man. Beautiful questions from a beautiful man. But writing your obituary and then like maybe some of that process, because I just thought that was interesting.
Yeah. Well, many years ago, actually in 2006, I created, I mean, I'm sure it's around, I don't want to take credit for creating it, but my friends were kind enough to be in this thought experiment with me. I created something called my living eulogy, YOULOGY. I actually think I just let go of the URL this year. And it was essentially a 360 process where I would poll and ask the closest human beings to me, like, how is it that you perceive me? If you were describing in 3 words, what might those 3 words be? What am I not seeing? I probably didn't ask these questions as eloquently as I can probably now, because I didn't have the access to the vocabulary, like shadow work and things like that. But I was basically like, what sort of things will you remember about how it is that I made you feel? And what am I not seeing right now? And like, where is the delta was essentially what my work was. So then I would do my own self-analysis, and then I would compare it to how it is that others perceived me. And then like the gap was a part of where my work was. And it's really interesting.
The delta being the difference, right?
That's right. That's right. Yep. So, and the difference, like, it could be a blind spot analysis in a great way, where it's like an unrealized strength, right? And to tie this to work, with a lot of folks that I work with, they're typically high performing, C-suite, essentially killing it in life. And there is a great deal, except in one area, which I can get into, there is a great deal of undervaluing how it is that they are doing in a certain aspect or area of their life, or a certain category of how it is that they show up, where they underrate themselves. So it actually serves to be like an illuminating piece for either the things that you kind of forget and don't even realize that you do well, and also for the things that people really appreciate you for, that you think you're like a 4 out of 10 around, and they're like, oh, that's like an 11 out of 10. Like, this is how you show up, really consistently. And of course it can go in the other direction as well. So I think
you might think you're just absolutely smashing it one way, and then everyone else is perceiving you as a giant douche canoe.
100%.
That's the actual term that they put in there.
Yeah, that's technical. Yeah, that's the delta.
That happens too. And I think what's important about that is that you want to choose people who might have some controversial and adversarial opinions that might hurt a little bit. So not just to choose people who are like from, just cheerleaders, and but also to choose people who you may have had a great deal of interpersonal conflict with, where things have been really, really hard. Like, for instance, that person for me is my sister. So I choose her.
Sometimes family is the ones that can lay it out, right?
Ask your mom in Spanish. She'll be like, this is it.
Ask your sister, ask your mom in front of you.
Right.
Totally.
You're like, mom, I can understand you. I'm right here.
Exactly. So that's a part of it. And it evolves, it evolves over time. The things that used to be important to me, which were more essentially like egoically centered and individualistic, have really expanded and grown a little bit bigger, a lot bigger over time. The things that used to be important to me have fallen away. When I used to think about, like, I think a lot about, I have one core value. I keep my life really, really simple, and I organize around that one core value, and that's freedom. So from there is how I build any sort of goals. Like, I know that that's the most critically important thing for me. So I have my own internalized definition of what it is that is. And that also ties into my obituary practice. So it's like, okay, do I feel free? Am I enabling freedom for others? Like, what does this look like in my life? What is the feeling of freedom? What does it look like to not feel free? So those are the types of things that both are emergent and inform how it is that I do
I
this.
just pictured in GIF fashion and meme fashion, William Wallace. That's where my mind went.
I actually I went the other way, Nick, and I was like Homer Simpson, where he's got the monkey and the symbols. Sometimes that's my mind, and I'm like, I need to think a little bit more. That was amazing.
The beauty of a YOU, and I think you should reframe that, bring it back up, resurrect it. Yeah, bring it back up. There's a program that we have that can make that process really efficient and easy for you, and we'll share that with you after if that would be interesting. It's free, so it's something you can do. But that process would serve a lot of our community too, going through that eulogy process, and might be a way for people to get into conversation with you about what you do. And going into your philosophies of life, they start to emerge. What's important? What matters to Erika? And it gives a sampling of what could be possible for those that are watching. And the way our brains are designed with our mirror neurons, the ones that reflect back in ourselves what others are doing and fire when others are doing things, is what occurs. So when we're doing these conversations weekly, and I'm thinking about this, and I'm going to get way off track and bring it back, is that right here we get to experience other people's versions of life, and inside of us there's a change. Every week we get to jump on here and have conversations. It's like a coaching session. So we get a sampling of what's possible for us. Our neurons fire, and then if we want to, we can continue that path, and it becomes our automation, our way of being.
Yes.
And so as you look at your way of being, this is a sampling for those that are watching. See, I could pull it. I'll pull it back here, giving us a sampling of what's possible in your world. And so for you specifically, what is it that matters in your world? What is it that, and two forms of this, what's important, and also what are you materializing from your imagination and from the ethereal, from source, or however you describe that? What matters in your life that gets created, and then also what matters, what's important. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Do you want to play with that for a minute?
Sure. And you let me know whether I'm getting too tangential or whether there's a different question.
Tangential, you go be tangential. Be gentle being tangential.
You might just lose me. Just bring me back.
I just get rantle.
Is
what I get.
I love it. Such a deep question. So there's so many different ways that I can go. If
you just chose one, whatever is foremost.
What comes up more than anything else is this deep, unwavering service orientation and desire to be useful, not in a way that society deems, and Nick, you and I have talked about this before, right? Like an obsession with busyness or anything like that. But like, how can I truly be in service and of service? And I think that what I'm able to bring to people is quite simple, and it's a safe space to feel seen and heard. So and we're nonverbal, I think we're 70% nonverbal, something like that. So just being able to be present with somebody is one of the greatest gifts that you can give them. So
I see Ryan's face like
nothing. Just keep going. We're good. Might make something happen in the comments. Keep going. You're doing great.
Yeah, to just read the things that aren't being shared and said. And I that's certainly a part of my mission, or what I wish to bring to the world. And from that place of deep presence, like that essentially creates the container for the most incredible, profound work to emerge. And I do a lot of I have a really interesting relationship with technology where my entire coaching practice is completely referral based. And I spend a lot of time offline in order to just recuperate. I have really, really, really strong boundaries around that. And I'm constantly cultivating attention, particularly living in the society where we're being pulled in 1,000 different directions all of the time. So that's one of the main practices that I really ground into.
Can I insert something into this?
Sure.
Like the idea that this is random as shit, but it's the idea that you have two people in front of you and they're going to have a conversation with you. Einstein's ability to create relativity was simply from what he was putting in there, evolved out of him. And so it's something we all can do. So we're sitting there in conversation. There's an opportunity to have a dialogue with somebody. And there's a person over here that says, I just, I love comic books. I just stuff my head full of comic books. Right. Mm-hmm. And you're going to have a deep conversation with this person. And then there's Erika over here that says, well, I speak multiple languages. I come from multiple cultures. I am developing myself in a world that is different from what I was maybe born in. I've been, I've got degrees in this, and this. And I'm sitting there listening, not as a matter of one's better than the other, but if I'm in deep dialogue, who's going to be able to draw from more in that conversation? And this is a possibility for anybody listening, is that intuition that comes from what's in there, what's stored in there. And as an ability, we have the ability to store the entire internet, every single one of us, in our single brains. And so somebody that fills it with comic books or cartoons for coaching and conversation versus somebody that is really filling it full of things that would be serving, useful. It's not about that you're smarter than anybody. It's just that when you go to draw from intuition, your draw bank is huge. Does that make sense? Does that bring up, I know that's a little off course there, but
yeah, I think a lot about time and energy, right? And I imagine it all to be finite. So the way I don't judge the way people spend their time or what it is that they wish to devote their lives to, but I do think of my life as a devotional practice. And it's always me versus me. Like, how can I meet like the newest iteration of my being? Where am I in my becoming process? And what's going to make me at the beginning and at the end of the day feel like I'm living a well-lived day, which each one of those experiences will result in living a well-lived life. What will make me feel the ways that I want to feel by the end of my life, and what is going to make me feel enriched. And I think we all have our vices and our distractive mechanisms, right? And when I work with my clients, we either call them vampiritos, which is like mini vampires, because it's a cute way to say vampire. Yeah. When you say it with a Spanish accent, it's probably even a little bit cuter. But it's like, what are those little time and energy sucks? So it's not so much like a shaming mechanism, but how is it? How do you show up for your life and your time? And what is the thing pointing to? So if you're investing your time and energy in a thing, and that's where you want to be, what are you not addressing? What are you not listening to? Can you pay attention to any sort of sensation that's coming up? Because I think in society, a part of our work, a part of my work, I should say, is almost like a simplification process. Like, how do you unpack and strip away all of the conditioning in order to get closer to like the inherent nature that is you, and then create and live from that place?
So I want to kind of reword what I shared there, so it's not fully egoic, because it could be that the more you know, the better you're able to teach. It's not that. It's that some people become experts in certain areas. If I was going and wanted to learn from somebody in the comic book world, I would want that person that knows comic books, right? Because that's what they've devoted themselves to. But depending on what you're trying to create in your life, being in presence of somebody that is devoted their learning and understanding and their desires to grow around a certain topic like you have. I don't know anything about obituaries or eulogies or anything like that. I haven't had some of the experiences that you've had. So for me to develop that, I'd want to go to somebody that had developed that. And there are going to be variations around that in the world, depending on what we're looking for. Absolutely. But the idea is the devotion of it. Somebody that gets so ingrained with it that they want to know all they can about it. That might be from the spiritual sense. That might be scientific. Does that make sense? I'm just trying to clean up the mess I just created with that comment. I'm waiting for the comments to come through like, Nick, that is bullshit. Yeah.
I understood. Yeah.
Well, so the matter, and going back to what matters to you is the creation of holding space and creating a container for people to do their work. And your ability to do that, I can tell already, your ability to listen, your interaction in this conversation. I see you watching in both directions, the dialogue. I've seen people where they have no clue what's going on the other side of the table, and there's an opportunity there to really slow down with a person. Your ability to create a capacity and a container for people to be heard, which I love Carl Rogers, right? His work and his method is simply to hold space and have you hear you in such a way that you do your own work and your own resolution. And I hear that in what you're describing here is that you create that space and you help people hear themselves when they may not hear themselves. Is that accurate?
That's absolutely right. That's absolutely right. And there are many people who unfortunately don't have a ton of relationships or the experience of just being held in a way where someone's not nitpicking or judging them or forcing a different worldview upon them, particularly if they differ in any sort of, opinions or live differently, etc. And that was also that was a challenging lesson for me to learn. And like most things, I think it's like a Ram Dass quote, like whenever you think you're enlightened or evolved, go back to your family, like hang out with them, and then you'll see all the stuff come up again. And that was something that I really learned within my family unit, because I had wanted the best for my mom and for my dad. And when I was early on the spiritual path and in my journey, I had not really listened to I'd not really heard their no, because I wanted so much more for them. So I would just impale them with the things that I was learning.
Yeah. Wow.
So that really taught me that.
I don't see that anywhere else in the world. That's a strange behavior.
Yeah, exactly. Right? Super unusual.
Yeah.
Coming from a place of goodness, I just wanted the best for them. And I was like, oh, come on, I can, like, let's do this together. Like, I'm here for you. I know, whatever. And then I let that go.
There's a forcing of it, right?
Totally. There's a forcing, and and I'm not claiming to be anybody's teacher, but that saying that comes to mind is, as soon as the student is ready, the teacher appears. And that's very true. Like, you cannot meet somebody at a place where you want them to be. They have to rise and meet you there, and then that can unfold. So that's something that I learned about the listening. So now, and that's why I'm like, oh, I just have to embody. And when people get curious about a thing, like, how did you learn that thing? Or how'd you do it? Ask questions that you both are asking. Then we can go into that, because at least then you get the micro yes, and there's an openness to exploring, versus like drilling your ideology or like the things that you're excited to share with people, forcing it onto them.
We have our version, within the Giants, and we try and keep it neutral, because there are a lot of backgrounds in our group, a lot of cultures, races, religions, politics, political views. We try and keep it fairly neutral in there, which is a challenge, because you have this energy of, no, this is the way it is. And in my book, The Art of Accomplishment, I talked about the bubble perspective, where all these people are in bubbles and they're going around saying, hey, this is the way this is my world, this is the way I see it, it's my bubble. They bump into somebody else and they've got a different view, and they're like, no, you're wrong. And they battle, and we get in groups and out groups. And if they could just hold space, like Hugh just said, an understanding of my understanding, is when you get over there and you hear somebody else's perception and perspective of life, it's not necessarily that you have to agree with it. It's simply you can hold space for the idea that I see how you can see that as a truth, and that is a truth. And then you have your truth, and it doesn't make either one right or wrong. It's just simply there's two different versions, relative versions of the truth. And so opening up to that allows them to have space to feel safe and open up and describe their world, which creates opportunity to see it a little different. Right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's at the foundational basis of so much of the work that I do, so much of the mediation, that happens. Absolutely.
Mediation. Yeah. Interesting. Having two people in front of you, is that? Yeah.
Sometimes a group of people, sometimes a group of executives that have really different experiences and worldviews, which how it is that they show up. So sometimes finding the common ground isn't possible in every single instance, right? So but at least let's get to a place of understanding, or an openness to accepting multiple truths and multiple realities, even if they're not your own.
Can you create a distinction between understanding and agreement?
That's another great question. We'll never really, I guess one way to test for understanding is to reflect back what you heard and what you experienced to the person, and then checking for understanding. I think that's the only real way to get to a place of understanding is creating a reframe and checking in with the person who delivered the message to see if you're tracking with them. From an acceptance perspective, I can speak to what it is that might look like. It's verbal. It could be verbalized, like, I hear you, yes, I see you. Or it could also be you feel, what I've experienced most of the time is like a softening, like the shoulders go down, the jaw's no longer tense, people are smiling, movements are a bit more relaxed. They're no longer like this, and they move to a more expressive and relaxed way of being. I'm not saying that those are like the tried and true ways, but there is often like you feel something in the room. In the room.
Right. You're like, what the hell?
Yeah. Nod, so even
Yeah.
before the verbal cueing, you start to feel and witness like a relaxed energy in this space.
Yeah. The idea of acceptance and agreement is it is what it is. Like the way they see the world is the way they see the world. That is acceptance. That is what it is. It doesn't mean that it's necessarily something I want to accommodate within me, but I have allowance for it. JP
Yes.
Morgan, he talks about allowance and accommodation, and that allowance is I can hold space for you to have that view. My view is a little different, but I can allow for that. I won't take it in as my personal view, because then that becomes agreement. Now it's not only do I understand you and I can accept you, but now I agree with you, which is where the conversation can go. There was a Ontocore training that I did with Brandon Craig, and he talked about a model of relating and just simply getting into a space where you can hold space for somebody's version on the other side of the fence. I picture the image where the two guys are arguing. It's a 6, it's a 9, and they're both correct based on their perception. And so a model of relating is simply the idea of being able to hold space for an understanding and an acceptance that it is what it is. And then from there, come to an agreement, come to a resolution, in a way, a seeing of the world differently.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the traps that we fall into often is our brains there's like this myth of multitasking, right? Like our body's constantly multitasking, but we can't prepare a response and listen at the same time in the most effective way. And being fully present in a conversation may mean that you drop and you let go and you shed your responses. And this was a tremendous lesson for me to learn while I was at PwC, where I was like, how do I not build a case and listen fully? Because you can't listen to yourself and listen to others at exactly the same time. So that was like a skill that I had to develop. And I did notice that over time, I became a deeper and more active listener, because I was actually even if I lost my train of thought, it'll come back. That's okay.
Yeah.
I don't have to, why do I even have to say that? Like, it's okay. And that actually left to like a deepening of the bond, like almost all of the time.
I love that you said skill set, because it's developed, it's created, which means it's available to anybody that wants to develop that.
100%.
You could order it off Amazon almost, right? Like
discount code Erika 10.
Erika 10. Go ahead and order yours today. Only $19.99. The skill set called listening, deep listening.
Exactly.
On Amazon Prime. Yeah, this is beautiful. Ryan, did you have some thoughts come up through that? I saw your comments there.
Yeah, I don't know if it comes just naturally for me, but I can I see the good in people. Sometimes they can fool me. I've been fooled a few times, where they're not good people. But my heart always goes to the best in people. And sometimes that masks other things that their actions do that you don't see that they're doing behind the scenes. But for the most part, I can take just about anybody and hear them and listen to them and hold them and drop my judgments. And it doesn't mean that I have to accept their position. I might agree 100% the opposite direction, whatever, but I can love them and hold them. And then I can also help them to step into their giant potential, whatever they want to accomplish, whatever they want to do, to be the best at whatever that is. And so I appreciate what you're saying here, because it also makes me sit here and reflect and think about, how am I showing up? What can I do differently to to just love and to serve and help other people in the best way possible for them, not for me.
That's beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I think that that's incredibly, incredibly important. A couple of things that come to mind. That's not easy for everybody. So I love that you do that. It's I don't know whether to call it a principle or a practice. But I fall in love with potential, which certainly has its shadow as well, but it really serves me in the coaching practice, because when I show up for my clients, I'm like, oh, I can see where that is. And now I know how to temper that, but I can hold that vision with them. And while I'm creating the structure for them to have the personal responsibility, accountability and self-sovereignty to step into that, but I can hold that with them and celebrate them along the way. Where people get into trouble with that, myself included, is when it comes to romantic relationships. And I'm curious to know whether that's the case for you with respect to falling in love with potential or things that aren't there.
I'm in love with Tony Schmaltz. This guy is amazing. And Alex.
That is an interesting question. Do we want to dive into that for a minute on relationship?
We can. Yeah. We can if you'd like to.
As a next
I love everybody.
Yeah, so I have a tendency within relationship to hold a little bit of a space there, a little bit of distance. And so, yeah, I do it in every relationship. It's not exclusive to what you're describing as a relationship. It's every relationship. I still hold a little bit of distance. And I create my own time to be with me. And then there's this concern that I might have to give that up inside of a relationship. And there's this desire to be me fully, and this desire to serve and love the person that I'm with, whoever that is. As long as they're authentically themselves, then I can do that. If there's something else going on there, that's really hard to do because you don't know who you're working with. Now, if I get into a relationship and I'm willing to accommodate in certain areas, I don't even know where I'm going with this, if that makes sense. Ryan, maybe you could help me clarify this one.
Nope.
Because
I'm just kidding. I'm just
out.
gonna let you flounder.
No, the idea of coming to an understanding in relationship. So I got divorced after 17 years of marriage. And toward the end there was a period where we just couldn't communicate anymore. We were really both struggling. I was struggling. She was struggling. We navigated the divorce without attorneys. We navigated and created a friendship after the fact. We've been very friendly and amicable since, but it was a creation. It took work and effort from both of us. And so there was some letting go and the resentments and the forgiveness and not causing additional harm, adding a marble to her jar and my kids' jars kind of a thing. But when it comes to new relationship, there's a trauma that is built up that creates a guard. And so that see, here I am opening up, guys. This is my inside stuff. So
I love it.
That idea that somebody else out there in relationship that they can hold space for me to be who I am. I can hold space for them to be who they are. We can communicate as needed. And we're both coming from an authentic place. That's where, the question would be is, how do you see that in relationship? How do you create that in relationship? And why is it, maybe that's too many questions here, but why is it that when we get into a romantic relationship, we start to show up totally different from a business relationship? Do you want to tackle that? Is that too much?
It's not too much. There are a few things that are ever.
It was close, Nick, though.
You are
right on the edge.
It's like on that car that's teetering on the edge. Yeah. You are right there.
She's got you though.
Yeah.
So I guess now is a really good time to share that when I work with my clients, I don't typically touch the realm of romantic relationships. So it's more focused on relationships in general. And if somebody is showing up self-love, wholeness, fullness, aligned to their passion, purpose, and truth, etc., that's going to extend and emanate and touch every relationship in their lives. But I'm certainly not the authority when it comes to romantic relationships. I want to be super clear around that. And it's a journey for me, and I'm very much in the inquiry and in the exploration. I just come off about a year of intentional celibacy, which has inspired and created the spaciousness for me to do so much, like put so much brilliant work out into the world, and also help me heal my heart and reevaluate a lot of different things. You said a lot of things that are really important, and one of them that I loved is like putting the marbles in the jar and feeling, just that you were able to even come to this place where there were no lawyers and you just were able to show up for each other. And I often think about just what does it mean to show up in wholeness? And that doesn't mean perfection, like fully whole. Like, how does one eradicate codependency, and how can you be so grounded in who it is that you are? Like right now, to date me, I don't mean this, I'm a little bit concerned with how this is going to come off, but I'm going to go with it anyway.
This isn't an offer, right? Like,
No.
so you're just describing an experience here. So for those that are listening, this isn't an offer to reach out for a date. It's just simply Erika's describing.
I forgot about that entirely. Yeah. I mean, to what you were saying, right, with respect to becoming so whole within yourself and loving the time, like your solo time. And now, in order to be in any sort of relationship, the things that I'm thinking and feeling are, is it worth dedicating, carving out time, space, and energy to allow this person in? So I too am boundaried. And that, I think, could be the wisdom of experience. There's a shadow frequency to that as well, where you just become guarded and shut down. So I think just watching where it is that you are, tending to your heart, giving yourself space and between relationships and transitioning, and just really paying attention to your truth. Like, do I actually feel open right now? Okay, cool. What is that looking like in my life then? What am I doing to signal that? Is like the microcosm matching the macrocosm? A lot of times, I mean, my friends, we laugh about this all the time. I'm not on any apps, not because I have any aversion to apps, but because I have this ingrained belief that I meet people all the time in real life. As long as I'm just like happy, embodied, doing my thing, living my truth, going out there, living my life, I'll meet people, and it happens all the time. So I think that, but that's also what my signal system is putting out there. I'm not like, hi, I'm available, but I'm very much like, I love my life. Things are really cool. And I'm open, like I'm happy, I'm at peace for the most part. So I think that matters a lot. I don't even know if I answered your question.
No, you did. I think you did, because it truly is. It's a healing of yourself first, and then bringing that into the world and finding somebody else that's also doing that kind of work for themselves and coming together in a relationship. The dance of codependency is this: I'm healthy, you're healthy. It's like, it's this back and forth, right?
Yeah.
And it's not, some people are like, well, that's a narcissist. This is that's codependency. Well, yeah, it's probably a blend of traits of those things. But traits doesn't merit a diagnosis.
Yeah.
But
does unhealthy, I'm pointing to myself, does unhealthy attract unhealthy?
I think that it certainly can. Right?
Not as a requirement, though. It's like, oh, you're unhealthy, so let's get you on unhealthy.com for unhealthy people. Get you set up.
But I'm thinking, like, going along the lines of what you were talking about, like you work on you, and you work on the healing, and you work on loving yourself, and sometimes love comes in from
I think having a level of discernment and treating everybody as your potential teacher. And the other thing I want to say too is there's this concept about how, like, what I learned growing up is there's going to be a man who completes me in like in a heteronormative sense, right? Like I'm at 50%, there's this other 50, and I changed that ratio to 100 and 100. So like if both fill the third energy or the third entity, and you serve what it is that, like, what is the higher calling of this relationship? There are these individual needs, but then what's that thing? How do we feed and cultivate and nurture, empower, and grow that relationship, and devote time and attention to nurturing that, and getting really clear on, like, do we like the way that this is evolving? Does this still make sense? Etc. I think that it's really important to show up in that sort of way. And some of the comments are alluding to this, but I mean, I certainly believe in the law of attraction as well, as one of the many things. So I do think that you are often a vibrational match to what it is that you're attracting. That, you talk about mirror neurons, like I think about the mirroring of society and how it is that you show up, and just like vibrational frequencies and how we are mostly energy. So that's a subject for another day.
We could do a whole topic on that.
I saw there's coming through around that.
There's a, so we don't get too far off on it, but it's beautiful. There really could be a topic on this where we just discuss that. There was a study done on longevity of people and what causes them to live the longest. And social connection was the largest factor in our overall health, the largest, and specifically relationship. And so when it comes to that, the healthier you can get that, the longer you're going to live. You're going to add life to your life. And so it really is important to heal yourself. We each have to heal ourselves, because unless we're healed, we're going to continue to bring in teachers that teach us how to do that. And so I think we are all capable of that. There are some people that they may take their whole life and never get through that lesson, which is okay. But we are all capable of it. We have capacity for it. We're designed for that. And so I say, and so, like there's something to follow. I didn't have anything to follow. I was really digging for something. It's kind of like like I didn't know what to say next. No, I think it's beautiful that this conversation even evolved the way it did. If we were to predict this conversation at the beginning, just going back to the analogy of the tree in your life, there's no way we could have predicted this as an outcome. Yet it was fulfilling as a whole. There's fruit and benefit that came from this dialogue today. Yet we didn't have to go back and know every step going into it. There's a model in that for anyone listening, is let go a little bit around the how-to of your life. Trust that the steps that you're taking are going to create something beautiful. Just keep stepping. And so we appreciate you being on with us.
Thank you all. Thank you so much for having me. Thanks to everybody who tuned in. It's such a joy and a pleasure. Thank you.
Is there an offer that you have for the viewers if somebody wants to have a conversation with you? Can you speak to that?
Yes. If anybody is curious about my work, wants to book a call, 30-minute call, I offer them for free, discovery or chemistry calls, and you can have a look at my website. And there are also tons of testimonials and things on there. My website is www.erikacartagena, my name.com. And Cartagena spelled like the city in Colombia. Erika is with a K.
For those that speak with the English accent, it's Erika Cartagena. .com. Yes. Yeah. Really butcher it. No. So reach out and have a conversation. That's a beautiful offer for those that are watching. And I can already sense from that there's going to be a container held for whoever does that to really open up and hear things from a different point of view, see some possibilities. Ryan, did you have some other thoughts?
Man, I just learned a lot about, just how others are observing me. I went through that exercise, which is kind of weird and a little spooky that this came up today on the eulogy.
Wow.
And have a big list of things. And it's given me some time to think about who Ryan is consistently, and to look and make more goals and more just kind of hold the vision of where I want to move next, I guess is the term, because I feel like as you get to a point, you look up and there's a higher point, you just keep spiraling up. And so I can see where I'm at currently, and then also where I want to be next, and start moving towards that. So this has been really great to hear from your perspective, and hear all of Nick's beautiful questions. You're an amazing human, Erika, and I appreciate. And the nice thing is that we get to. Everybody has different backgrounds and stories when they come on. But what I see is people overcoming and growing and stepping and not giving up, and turning around and helping others. And as they're doing those things, they're giants. You're a giant in the world, and thank you for being a giant in our world.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate you both so very much. Hopefully we'll chat really soon. Thanks for having me on.
You're welcome. For those that are watching, remember, you're exactly where you're supposed to be. You're right on time. You're doing what you should be doing. And there are some possibilities around what you could be doing as well. So do that. Create your creation. Whatever it is good enough. So we love you. Thanks for being a part of the show. And we will see you in the next episode.
Love you too.
Bye-bye.